Hey everybody, welcome to the Mike Pingel Show. I'm Mike Pingel, and welcome to the show. Today we have author Eddie Shapiro, and his new book is out right now, guys, and you have to go to Amazon and purchase it. It's a wonderful guy conversation with the greatest men of musicals. He has also written two other books. He has written Nothing Like a Dame, Conversations with the Great Women of Musical Theater. Also, Queens of the Kingdom, the ultimate gay and lesbian guide of Disney's theme parks. He has also written for many stories for other magazines such as Out, Backstage West is one word, In Theater, and Instinct magazine, among others, I'm sure. Welcome to the show. Eddie, welcome to the show. Yay! Do you hear the applause? The applause is going.
I always hear the applause. I walk down the street, I hear the applause. I hear it everywhere.
There are drugs for that.
That's why I hear the applause, because I take plenty of them.
Right. How are you today?
I'm swell. I just came from the dentist. What could be better?
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Dentist? What did you have done? Anything exciting?
A cleaning, but like it's literally. I'm being facetious, obviously, when I say I'm having the best day ever. But like the world is awakening again. It's kind of cool.
I know. I heard something that Disneyland is opening again.
Disneyland is opening again on April 30th. It's pretty damned exciting. So
it is exciting. I guess, do you know, when are the tickets going on sale? Or if you're a pass holder, can you go? I don't know. These are questions we don't know.
You cannot get pass holders, no more, and tickets have not yet. They haven't announced anything other than their reopen date. But you will need a reservation and more information to come. Although by the time this airs, right?
Which will be tomorrow.
There will probably be information. But as of today, not yet.
Who knows? Things keep moving so fast.
People come and go so quickly around here.
Exactly. They just have are you going to their foodie thing that they're going on?
I am, because, because it's what you do.
See, I couldn't get tickets. I really didn't try that hard, but.
Yeah.
But that's
well, you didn't need to, because it turns out they were opening a week later. So there you go.
Well, that's good. Well, let's talk about your new book. Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
How long have you been working on this book project?
That is a complicated question. It seems simple, and yet no. So the last book that I did, Nothing Like a Dame, Conversations with the Great Women of Musical Theater, it's hard to believe that came out in 2014. It's literally 7 years ago. And this book took a very long time to write, in large part because when I insist that these conversations always happen in person. So when you're doing in-person conversations with working actors, and I myself am bi-coastal, so I'm not always in New York, scheduling becomes a problem. And then you add on the fact that in these books, I go for career-encompassing conversations. So we talk about everything from the time you first got interested in theater to your most recent show, every show in between. So that ends up being hours. And like Patti, LuPone and I spent 14 hours together. So
what?
So that amount of
and stuff.
I'm sorry?
Did you bring jammies and stuff?
I did sleep over, actually, but that amount of time often takes multiple sessions. So then you multiply that by 20 people in the book, and their schedule, my schedule, multiple sessions, and it ends up being a years-long project. So a wonderful guy was the male version of this last book was in my head as something to do that I wanted to do for a couple of years, and then I started in earnest probably about 3 years ago. And it took, 2.5 years to do. And then of course it takes time for them to put it together and make a book and all of that stuff. But yeah, it took time. Long answer, sorry.
No, that's a great answer. How do you said you look through their whole career. Do you pick out burning questions? Do you give everybody one question, everything, or do you just do it per actor?
Per guy. My preparation is never sort of formulated questions. It's always, I like to read what they've said to the press before and to listen to interviews, because I always want to know a story that's been told a zillion times before, so that I can either, if I start getting someone's tape, I can either immediately shift gears or I can ask around it and pivot. Carol Channing is a good example. If you ask her, like, for example, when she got into the business, she will tell you the story of how she first met her agent. And that story, you can go on YouTube and you can find her telling that story in 1964 and in 1984, and it's verbatim. So there are tapes that people play, and I very much want to stay out of that business. So my prep is really just to make sure I know what they've said a zillion times before so that I can recognize it. But then when I make notes of the chronology, I make notes of, in this year you did that, and that year you did that, so that we can go straight through the chronology. But then it's wherever the conversation takes us. And sometimes some of these people can sometimes wander a little far from the reservation, and you have to but you go with it because you never know what they're gonna, but then you get back to the chronology eventually. So that's sort of my path. And in choosing, maybe this is another one of your questions, so forgive me if I'm jumping the gun here, but in choosing who ends up in the book, it's complicated because there's a word count, and I want to do these super long chapters that cover people's full careers, and there's tons of great people out there, but so I focus on people who have full careers in musical theater. Mm-hmm. So somebody like Ben Platt, who we love, but Ben Platt did one notable musical, or Hugh Jackman, who is great, but Hugh Jackman has done 2 notable musicals, so I look for people who really have a full career of musical theater, and and not people also like Glenn Close, who's a movie star who's done a couple of musicals, but she's really a movie star. We're talking about theater folk. So that's my sort of criteria.
That could be another book. If you've done a musical, you're my book.
Yeah, exactly.
While interviewing all these guys from Broadway, what was your favorite one? I know.
Okay.
Which one surprised you the most? How about that?
Oh, okay. Well, those are different questions.
Whichever one's easier, or do them.
Or no, I can. And favorite is actually, there are different versions of favorite, right? Because like in terms of who I felt like, wow, that's a really, really great interview. Mm-hmm. Like my favorites there are probably Raul Esparza, because Raul Esparza shows just a tremendous, he's really, really sure of himself, and he knows what he's great at, but he's also not afraid to show his insecurity and his vulnerability. So those two things together feel really truthful and real and really compelling. But then there are also the people who you just have a good time with. And like, sitting with Jonathan Groff is just so easy and fun. Or Michael Cerveris, who is so intelligent and can talk about anything. Or Christian Borle, actually, who is also really, really bright and not so funny. You'd think he might be kind of antic and funny. I mean, not that he's not humorous, but he's not performing. But he's really, really smart. So that was a surprise to me. But really, almost all of them were thoroughly enjoyable to do. And every time I get to sit with these people, I kind of feel like, pinch me. This is, nirvana, that I get to be sitting on the couch with these people.
Exactly. Was there one story that took you by surprise, or you were like, ooh, I can't wait to share this little gem with people?
There are tons. The book is literally just chock full of them, but I'll give you one that's sort of like, and one that is a little sad. One of my favorite just sort of mishap stories, because mishaps are always fun. So Christopher Sieber, who a lot of people know from, he was most recently in the production of Company that closed when pandemic hit, but he was also one of the leads in The Prom. He was the Andrew, if you watch the movie of The Prom, he played the Andrew Rannells role on Broadway, originated that role. But he was the, he played Rapunzel's prince in the Vanessa Williams production of Into the Woods, and understudied Cinderella's prince. And Greg Edelman, who played, and they both played the wolf. They had 2 wolves on stage. So they're on stage together singing Hello, Little Girl. Greg Edelman throws his back out. in the middle of the night when he's howling. So they walk off stage, and Greg Edelman's like, you're going to have to go on for me. Like Cinderella's Prince. Switch gears immediately. So he's like, I got this. I grew up listening to this album. I know it backwards and forwards. And even though he hadn't had an understudy rehearsal, like he's like, I got it. And the stage manager is all like, and she's like, I got it. However, as anyone who's seen Into the Woods knows, at the end of Act 1, when Cinderella's stepsisters are having their feet mutilated in order to fit into the shoe, there's this effect with blood. And the way that is done is that the prince is wearing a little bag on his back with the blood in it. And there's a little pump in his hand and a hose that goes up his sleeve and down the other sleeve. And so he squeezes the pump and the blood filters into the shoe. So there's a little trickle of blood so that when after she takes off the shoe, he pumps, she turns it over and blood drips out. That's the effect, right? So he pumps, nothing happens. He pumps, nothing happens. He pumps, nothing. So he keeps pumping until blood comes out. But what he doesn't realize is that there's a delay because of the air buildup. It takes time for all the air to make it through the hose and squirt it out. So all of a sudden, it's gushing blood, and this shoe is full of blood. So like he turns it over, and it's like he's dumped a glass of water of blood out. Laura Benanti as Cinderella comes on and like puts the shoe on and like blood spurts. It's getting into the orchestra. He ultimately has to lift her up onto a white horse, plastic, which smears with blood. So like, that's one of my favorite mishap stories.
Oh my God.
I mean, come on. How good is that? But another story that really, really stuck with me, just in terms of the realities of the business, Norbert Leo Butz, who has 2 Tony Awards. He was, probably his most famous show is he was the original Fiyero in Wicked, but he has a Tony Award for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and another one for Catch Me If You Can. But he did a musical called Big Fish, based on that movie. And Big Fish was a big flop. And he did that. That's his most recent new musical that he's done. And that show, like many new musicals these days, it workshopped for several years. They did an out-of-town engagement, comes to Broadway, ran for something like, a few weeks and closed. And Norbert told me that, he said, I can't afford to do new musicals anymore, because you put so much of yourself, so many years into developing it and the character, and you're making no money. I mean, you're making a pittance and the payoff is meant to be when you open on Broadway, you'll be making a decent chunk of change, except for it closes 3 weeks later. So to put all of that into it and then have it close so quickly, he said, I can't afford to do new musicals anymore. I've got kids, I've got responsibilities. At the time that we spoke, he was doing My Fair Lady on Broadway, and he said, this I can do because it's tried and true. It's going to run. You're not having to workshop it for years to try to get the kinks out. You know exactly what it is. But new musicals, and that reality, super sad. And for a 2-time Tony Award winner in his prime to say, I can't do new musicals anymore, that's sad.
Yeah.
So that's the biz.
That's the biz. So sad.
Yeah.
It's sad. But I love the blood story. Into the Woods.
I know, right?
Favorite show ever.
Into the Woods?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You won't see it the same way again now.
Sounds like Into the Woods meet Carrie,
Exactly.
So what is your favorite Broadway musical?
I have a couple of favorites.
Okay.
I have a few favorites. I am lucky enough and old enough to have seen the original cast in the original Michael Bennett production of Dreamgirls. And that has stuck with me. Even though to listen to Dreamgirls, to listen to the cast album, it's not my favorite ever, but that production and the way in which the music and the choreography and the sets and the costumes and all of it came together so seamlessly is perfect theater to me. So I love it. And I love A Chorus Line, which is also a Michael Bennett show because of what it has to say. But in terms of like the old time classics, My Fair Lady really is, I think, my favorite. It's so perfectly constructed. So yeah, that's my favorite.
Which show have you seen the most on Broadway?
I'm, it's actually an interesting question, because the thing that sometimes we see the most is not necessarily the best. I was obsessed with the show The Mystery of Edwin Drood.
Oh.
Which, as if you know the show, audience members vote on the ending because it's a mystery. So there are lots of different possible endings. So I went a zillion times to that show. It's not a perfect show by any stretch of the imagination, but I was in love with it. I was like a psychopath. So I went all the time to see different, and also, that kind of thing happens. Some of that, at least for me, has to do with the time of your life. I was a teenager. So I didn't have to think about other things. I could just get standing room tickets and go. I didn't have to worry about, a job or taxes or real shit, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
The real shit. A simpler time in life.
Exactly.
A simpler time. In your other book, Dames, what is and who is your favorite dame? Who is your favorite dame in that book?
Again, favorite. It's very subjective. There are ways in which Patti LuPone was fantastic, because she is so exactly herself. Right. She's just what you want her to be. Same with Angela Lansbury. I mean, Angela Lansbury insists on making me tea, I mean, come on, like that kind of thing is perfect. Laura Benanti and Audra McDonald, I adore just as humans, again, to sit and laugh with, and they're just so grounded and fun and lovely. Elaine Stritch, for just being Elaine Stritch, for being so cantankerous and saying things like, Eddie, that was 50 years ago. How the fuck am I supposed to remember how I felt, And it's, as an interviewer, you want to kill yourself, but as a, for sheer comedy, you can't match it,
Do you find, you're talking about Elaine, that those people, like today, people are so like, we have to hold everything, we're on Instagram. We have to be very, like the way she seems, and they just have this way of saying, what they meant and what they felt. And
maybe. Although I think that was her brand, and you're talking about branding. I think that was her brand. And also, another old timer in that book was Carol Channing, who had a brand, and she sold it for her entire career. It was a brand, even though it wasn't on social. So I'm not sure, but I get your point. There's not a lot of, especially with I think with the Broadway people, and certainly with Patti LuPone. There's
Patti
not
LuPone is very, very, very open-minded and open-mouthed about her thoughts, right. Everything more than I think most people are.
Yeah, she's not there. Most of the women of the stage, I think, are not trying to come off. The one exception to that is actually Chita Rivera, and Chita Rivera is lovely, lovely, lovely. But Chita Rivera makes she's very, very careful about not putting negativity out into the world. Because she thinks that it's destructive. So she just won't engage in negativity. And on the one hand, as a human, I applaud her. As an interviewer, you're kind of like, oh, brother.
Okay, we heard that script before. Thanks.
Well, she, like at one point I asked her about working with Jerome Robbins, and Jerome who directed West Side Story, and Jerome Robbins was known to be just an impossible director. He was just he could be mean to actors, and that was his style, to get the best out of them. She refused to say anything negative about him. And I even said to her, I was like, you're not spilling any tea, like it's out there, it's known. But all she would say is, he gave me my career. I have to be incredibly grateful to him for that. So, good for her, for having her standard.
That's true. All right, here's a question. For either book, the guy and the dames, an actress or actor who's passed, who would you really would have liked to interviewed for either book or both books?
I actually, in the dedication in both books, are to the people I've missed. And so by name, and in the first one, it is Ethel Merman. Of course, it's Ethel Merman. I mean, come on, who wouldn't want to sit with Ethel Merman? Although, you know, like Elaine Stritch, I'm sure she would have cursed me out. But oh, you know, I gotta say about Elaine Stritch actually also, after the interview, she was cantankerous throughout, but then she called me, we spoke a few times on the phone afterwards, and she called me to tell me this story about Judy Garland. And then she said, I got to tell you something, Eddie. You know, I got so bored talking about the past all the time, but I wanted to call you and share this with you because when I think of a story, I know that you have such a genuine love for this stuff that I get excited to tell you. And I was like, I'm so happy to have that on tape because I never would have believed it otherwise. But so, you know, she could also be lovely. But Ethel Merman, I imagine, same deal. Like she would have been tough, but a fun interview. And of the men, Robert Preston or John Raitt. Oh, yeah. You know, but I'm late. I'm too late.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, so with both books, what is your favorite story ever of any of them that they told you?
Oh man, come on.
I know there's such general questions. Sorry.
Okay, no, I'll give you.
Yeah, no, I know there's something just pops in your head. You're like, this is the one.
Something did pop into my head actually. That I can't say it's my favorite, but it is one that always sticks with me in its sort of profundity. Barbara Cook, who interestingly enough, and again, if your audience doesn't necessarily know, Barbara Cook was the original Marian the Librarian and the Music Man, and she was also the original, before Betty Buckley, she was in Carrie. She was the mother in Carrie in London before it came to New York or in Stratford, and then went on to had a career during the Golden Age, and then did cabaret for the rest of her life. She's actually not in the first book because she decided, after I wrote the chapter, she decided to write her own autobiography. But I'm doing another volume on the ladies right now, and I am including her in that. I've gotten her son's permission on that because she's gone now. But anyway, that's all background. I sit down with Barbara Cook and I say, you know, right off the top of the bat, I say, you're Barbara Cook. You know, you announced that you're doing a concert at Carnegie Hall and it sells out instantly. You have performed at every single venue at Lincoln Center, which, by the way, I believe she's the only person for whom that's true. She was at that time a designated living landmark in New York City. I said, how does that all manifest? Like, how do you walk around as you? How does that feel? And she said, you know, it's all very nice. I know that I'm pretty good at what I do. I'm no dummy. Walk out on stage and get the ovation. It's all very nice. But I sort of feel like that's her. All that nice stuff happens to her. And at the end of the day, I get in my car, I go home, fat, bad knees, my desk is a mess. That's me. Her, me. And I thought, that's so interesting, this sort of separation between your stage persona and who you perceive yourself to be. That stuck with me. So
that's amazing.
I thought so. Yeah.
Now, we talked a little bit about Disney before.
Yes.
Do you think GayDays, because you're one of the producers of the GayDays, and
I am the producer of GayDays.
The producer. Sorry, everyone. The producer. Do you think it might happen this fall?
I know it will happen this fall.
Okay.
I mean, it's happening, unless, of course, look, we don't know anything. If there was another wave of variants that shut us all down again, that would be problematic. But assuming that we continue going in the direction that we're going, now that Disney has announced its reopening, we're on track.
Excellent. Excellent. That's what I like to hear. So talk about Disneyland. What's your favorite ride there?
Well, come on. The Haunted Mansion. I always love the Haunted Mansion. But, you know, it's funny, these books, there's been crossover. That's been great because I do both of these things. So I interviewed Carol Channing at GayDays at Disneyland for an audience of people to raise money for charity.
I was there.
There you go. And then I spent the day with her at Disneyland Park, and that's a whole other crazy story.
You did not.
A full day with Carol Channing at Disneyland.
That's like a book by itself, isn't it?
I did write an article about it because after she died, because it was so magical. And one of the favorite things that happened that day, actually, many favorite things happened that day, but one of the things that happened that day is at the end of the day, she and her husband, and she was 89 and he was 90. We come back to the Grand Californian Hotel because they've stayed over from the night before.
Mm-hmm.
So I plant them in the lobby while I go up to the room to get their stuff. And I come back down. And as you know, in the Grand Californian Hotel, there's a grand piano. So while I was upstairs, the pianist has come out to do his set and he's clocked her. So he starts to play Hello Dolly. So she gets up and starts to sing Hello Dolly. So if you happen to be walking through the Grand Californian Hotel at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, one Monday afternoon in October, there she is, Jolly'll never go away. You know, I mean, come on.
How did I not know that was going on?
That was some crazy stuff. And then also Audra McDonald, after, you know, I've forged a relationship with her through this book, she came and she did a concert at GayDays.
Mm-hmm.
She performed and brought her mother and her daughter, and what she really wanted to have a girls' family trip at Disneyland over GayDays. So she came and did a concert.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
amazing. Yeah. It's a fun, if you guys haven't been to it, I'm putting the website address. I think it's gaydays.com. Is it?
GayDaysAnaheim.com.
Anaheim.com. I'll put the link it below so you go. It's fun. It's fun. Everybody's in red. We're having a great time. It is wonderful. So a couple more questions. What is the Broadway CD playing right now in your car or in your home?
I'm embarrassed about this because I was somebody who, no, not about the show itself, but because I was somebody, like I have such a vast, I'm old. I have such a huge collection of CDs.
You are not old. Look how young you look.
I barely fished, but I have such a huge collection of CDs. But in my car, I listen to Sirius satellite radio because I like the sort of random jukebox-ness of it, and they choose for me. But what's bad about that is then you never really know a score backwards and forwards, which I love to do. The most recent thing I was listening to was Sideshow because I just interviewed, again, had like 14 hours and many sessions, but I just interviewed Alice Ripley and it made me want to listen to Sideshow again. Mm-hmm. So that's in my CD player over there.
Nice. During this pandemic, did you watch any, and did you have a favorite Broadway show you watched on Zoom or anything?
Well, I mean, of course we all watched Hamilton and that was magic. But I also just watched last night a show that hopefully by the time this broadcast will still be happening called Simply Sondheim that the Signature Theater in Arlington, Virginia put on. And it featured Norm Lewis, who is a friend, and Emily Skinner and Conrad Ricamora. And then a company of 8 people who are local to Arlington and performers there. And I was, you know, I kind of have, I don't want to say I'm an elitist, but I'm an elitist. I'm a snob. I'm like, oh, they'll be, you know, they'll be fine. They were great. These 8 people singing Sondheim really, really well staged. And I was a little bit in love. So yeah, that.
Nice. So what is the next book you're working on? The Kids of Broadway?
No, I told you I'm doing a second volume of The Women, so
okay.
Which I'm now halfway through. So we've got
brand new thing of all women. I'm so sorry. It's a whole all new women. So there's Nothing Like a Dame, which is coming out, and then A Wonderful Guy comes out on April 1st, and then I started doing a follow up because I didn't want to let the grass grow as long this time. So this one is called It Takes a Woman. And that one, I broke a rule. I am no longer doing them in person. I'm doing them via Zoom. But my logic was 2 things. As soon as I handed in the manuscript for A Wonderful Guy in June, I thought to myself, okay, we're in pandemic land. Everybody's at home. I have to have something that will fill my time and make me feel functional and productive. But also,
all the scheduling issues that I described before are no longer issues for these people because they're all at home too. So I can grab them now without having to worry about their show schedules or whatever. So I've actually been quite efficient, and I'm halfway through.
See, that's great. And you can record it, you can watch it later, and you can cram everybody on in a week or two. And you must be exhausted with all the work.
It's actually, I feel like, I don't want to say proud of myself because that's icky, but I feel grateful that I've had the opportunity to be, to feel like, okay, I this year has gone by and I amassed more than a Netflix queue.
That's that's true. That's true. I did a couple things too. Yes. Yes. Where can people buy your books?
They are available anywhere books are sold. So Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and unfortunately right now, when you say anywhere books are sold, that's kind of it, isn't it? I mean, probably not Costco, but yeah, in bookstores, in a bookstore near you.
Bookstore near you. Where can people stalk you on social media?
Sadly, I mean, I'm on Facebook, and Nothing Like a Dame has its own Facebook page, and I have a Facebook page. I have a Twitter account. Am I ever on it? Not so much, but I'm terrible. I'm like a Luddite. I'm a Luddite. But I'll tell you another, actually, that makes me feel better about being a Luddite. Another great thing that I took away from this book. Patti LuPone has some reputation, as you know, for accosting audience members who are disruptive. There was the time, of course, that she yelled at somebody for taking photos in Gypsy. There was the time when she was doing an off-Broadway show, where she literally grabbed a phone from somebody out of their hands while they were texting, and just walked off stage with it. She doesn't suffer it lightly, nor should she. We talked about that, and she put it in a way that I really appreciate. And I shall share with you. She said, we all, as audience members, have done a lot to be here, be it spent money on tickets, hired a babysitter, come in from out of town, put ourselves in a space where our goal is to enter into that world, the world on the stage. And you, with your phone or your crinkling water bottle or your talking or whatever it is, are yanking us back into this world, selfishly, when we're all invested in being over there. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because it makes me insane too. But I only thought of that because you asked where people can find me on social, and made me think of phones and this and how bad
They're all looking you up right now, and they can't seem to find you.
Well, right. But OnlyFans.
Oh, wow.
It's me and pictures of Carol Channing. That's all it is. On the teacups at Disneyland.
On the teacups at Disneyland.
That picture is, if you Google photos of me, that picture is actually available. So me and Carol Channing and her husband on a teacup. So.
It's on my face right now. I mean, that's kind of weird, guys. Y'all know that there's a photo on my face. Eddie, thank you so much for joining me on the Mike Pingel Show today, talking about your new book, A Wonderful Guy, a conversation with the great men of musical theater, which is going to be out on April 1st. Yes. You can buy it on Amazon. Pre-order, please. So his publisher is excited about it. I know everyone's excited.
I'm excited about it. Actually, it's very, very peculiar in this environment to have a book coming out and not be doing a book launch and book readings. It sort of feels like, all right, the day the book comes out will feel very much like the day before the book came out, because I'm still going to be at home. But
I did a book last year. I know what that means. I know how that feels. You have it and you put it out, you have pictures of it, and then you're like, are there any sales?
And there it is. But now, and as an author, you've written, the thing that you care about, obviously sales matter, but it's not even about the money. Nobody's getting rich on writing books. It's
True.
More about like this thing that you did because you want people to read it. You want to get the word out there. So I'm delighted to be here in the absence of a book launch or doing our reading at the Grove. This is fantastic. So thank you for having me.
Exactly. And I remember, with my books, my favorite thing about writing my books is when a fan comes up to me and they go, I didn't know that. I learned that from your book. And I'm like, that made me feel better than anything about doing the books. That my work made someone else knowledgeable about something they didn't know. So
it's fun. And on that point, literally this happened today, that I was scrolling on Facebook and there was a photograph of Chita Rivera, and somebody wrote, I read somewhere that she said blah, 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 blah. And I was able to respond, that's on page 46 of Nothing Like a Dame Conversations. He had read it in my book.
A snapshot and
right.
Charge you $1.50 for that. Eddie,
$1.50, I was gratified enough.
It's been a super pleasure chatting with you about your new book and your love of Broadway and, of course, Disneyland. I hope to see you this fall in person with a red shirt on. And everybody out Eddie, thank you so much for joining us today. Hey, everybody out there, thank you for watching us. Please share us, like us, and if you're watching us on Happy TV, the free streaming of the best LGBTQ out there, thank you for liking my show, other shows, and movies that are for free for streaming. So I'm glad.
And the Broadway, liking the Broadway.
Liking the Broadway, yes. Yeah, I don't know if they have any Broadway stuff on the show.
But if they're watching this right now and they've gotten this far, presumably they like the Broadway.
Oh, they love the Broadway.
There you go.
Everyone loves the Broadway. I would say we could sing out, but I'm not a very good singer. So
I've been on a date or two where they don't love the Broadway, and then they don't get to love me.
What?
I know, it's crazy.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Eddie, thank you again for joining me on my show. I appreciate you taking the time to talking about your brand new book, and I hope it's a huge success and you sleep over with your next favorite person. I can't believe you have sleepovers. I think that's in your new book.
I'll tell you one more sleepover. I did sleep at Carol Channing's house, and I made her matzo brie, which she had never had before.
What?
Sorry, I just said matzo brie. That's not true. I made her challah French toast because she told me on the phone that she had just discovered challah at the age of 89. She'd never had challah before. So I made her challah French toast. Yeah, that was. But then for lunch, we went to In-N-Out Burger, and you haven't lived, and you've heard Carol Channing say, "I have a double double." It happened.
I wish I could live in your shoes for a day. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye.
Bye.